I also know that the thoughts of many will be with the victims of the Southport killings. There are important questions to answer, and I will return to those after the case is concluded. Between 2009 and 2022, the OECD found children in England rose up global league tables in maths, reading, and science. Conservative government action means English schools now top the Western world at maths and reading. The Prime Minister's Schools Bill, which is being voted on in committee this week, reverses the improvements that made this happen. This bill is an act of vandalism. It is wrecking a cross-party consensus that lasted for decades. Why does the Prime Minister think that so many school leaders are criticising this bill?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it was Labour that introduced academies in the first place to drive up standards. Academies are here to stay and will continue to drive up standards. That's what the bill is about. But also in that bill...
Kemi Badenoch's sharp critique of the Prime Minister's schools bill serves as a stinging indictment of Keir Starmer's leadership, exposing what she perceives as his reckless disregard for the progress made in education over the past decade. Badenoch accuses Starmer of undoing years of hard work that elevated England's global standing in maths, reading, and science, branding his bill as an act of vandalism. This term underscores the severity of her critique, suggesting that Starmer is not only careless, but actively destructive in his policy-making. For Badenoch, the bill represents more than just poor governance. It symbolizes Starmer's inability to respect or build upon the cross-party consensus that previously drove significant improvements in education.
The British public kicked Conservatives out because we got things wrong. They were right. We had not delivered on things we said we would do. We'd let them down. And I hate letting people down. A lot needs to be fixed in our country. I think the economy needs fixing. I think the NHS needs fixing. Our immigration system needs fixing. So much needs fixing. Politicians of all parties for many decades now have been saying they're going to do things and then not doing them. You can get problems solved. I stopped crazy laws that would have seen rapists being put in women's prisons. And I did that by making sure people understood the problem, people heard the truth, and by never giving up. And so you can win these things if you do the right thing. You get people supporting you, not necessarily people who support your party. And people like J.K. Rowling, for instance, she's not a Conservative supporter, she's a Labour supporter. But when you touch on values, when you touch on principles, when people can see that you're fighting for the vulnerable, for women and girls, for those who have no voice, they will support you.
Starmer's actions, as Badenoch portrays them, reflect a pattern of incompetence and ideological stubbornness, prioritizing political maneuvering over the well-being of the nation's children. By seeking to reverse policies that propelled English schools to the top of the Western world in core subjects, Starmer appears disconnected from the practical realities and long-term goals of educational reform. Instead of addressing pressing issues or supporting measures that have demonstrably worked, he seems intent on appeasing narrow political interests, even at the expense of student outcomes and national progress. The actions of Starmer and the Labour Party, as Badenoch describes them, reflect a pattern of incompetence and ideological obstinacy, prioritizing political posturing over the words they promised. The economy has been sent into a nosedive while the British health system has been put on red alert. Illegal immigration is a major problem for the Starmer government, with statistics showing that 1 in 12 people in London are immigrants. This is an unimaginable figure for the British people, but instead of addressing pressing issues or supporting measures that have proven effective, Starmer and his colleagues seem intent on appeasing narrow political interests. Furthermore, Badenoch's remarks point to a deeper failure in Starmer's leadership, his inability to articulate a coherent vision for the country's future. By targeting successful educational reforms, Starmer risks alienating parents, teachers, and school leaders who have witnessed tangible benefits from the policies he seeks to dismantle. Badenoch's pointed question about the widespread criticism from school leaders amplifies this failure, suggesting that Starmer's proposals lack both evidence-based rationale and grassroots support. In essence, Badenoch paints Starmer as a leader, unfit to navigate the complexities of governance, more focused on erasing his predecessor's achievements than on fostering innovation or improvement. Her critique reveals a broader narrative of ineptitude, where Starmer's decisions are not only misguided but actively harmful, undermining the very institutions he claims to champion. If Starmer's bill is any indication of his broader approach to leadership, Badenoch's assessment leaves little room for optimism about his capacity to deliver meaningful progress for the nation.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now you, the British people, are being gaslit. You are being lied to. While the people always sensed there was something unusual about the Southport atrocities ever since that fateful day, the authorities have hid behind legal processes and bureaucracies. Yesterday, Keir Starmer admitted that he knew the details about Axel Ruda-Cabana's background long before they came out. Check out this clip.
Yes, I knew the details as they were emerging. That is the usual practice in a case such as this. But you know and I know that it would not have been right to disclose those details.
But this is not consistent with Keir Starmer's previous actions. During the 2017 Finsbury Park terror attack, Starmer called it a terror attack before terrorism charges had been announced. Keir Starmer also did the same in the case of the London Bridge attack in 2017 and the Plymouth attack in 2019. And of course, after Southport, he had no problem at all in deriding many people in this country as far-right thugs before they went to court and had their cases heard. Yesterday, he appealed to contempt of court laws for not releasing the information about Southport earlier. Check it out.
Are not just my choices, though it is a choice I would make. It is also the law of the land. That is why I couldn't disclose the details. It's why others couldn't disclose the details. It's why all of you as journalists couldn't disclose the details, because the same laws applied to you just as they applied to me. And it's really important that we make that clear. But the purpose of the rule is to protect the justice that the families and the victims are entitled to.
But if it applies to Southport, why didn't this apply to 3 other terror attacks, as well as those protests? We're now, of course, hearing reports that CPS pressured Merseyside police not to release details about the suspect. But just to top it all off, the government now wants you to believe that this was a case of knife purchase laws not being strong enough. You may remember when Sir David Amess was murdered by an Islamist terrorist, parliamentarians tried to make the issue about online abuse. Let's just be nice to one another. Well, the same thing is happening now. The government has fast-tracked tighter restrictions on online knife sales for under 18s, as if Amazon was to blame for Southport. Writing in The Sun today, the Prime Minister called Axel Ruda-Cabana a 2-click killer. But the fact of the matter is that the system, the state, failed the victims of Southport, much like the state failed the victims of Pakistani rape gangs. It's time for the obfuscation, the concealment, the cover-ups, and the deflections to come to an end. It's time for the people in power to tell us, the people, the truth.
Matt Goodwin's assertion that the British people are being gaslit under Keir Starmer's leadership is a damning critique of a leader he accuses of inconsistency, evasion, and a lack of moral courage when addressing critical issues such as terror incidents and grooming gangs. Goodwin's criticism points to a pattern in Starmer's approach, one characterized by selective outrage, where he seems more focused on political optics than on delivering the truth or justice. By failing to address these issues with the urgency and transparency they demand, Starmer not only undermines his credibility, but also insults the intelligence and trust of the British public. Goodwin's remarks highlight a glaring double standard in how Starmer handles sensitive matters, particularly terror incidents. Rather than confronting uncomfortable truths or holding authorities accountable, Starmer appears to prioritize narrative control, shielding himself and his party from scrutiny at the expense of public confidence. This reluctance to name and confront the root causes of these incidents conveys a troubling message that political expediency outweighs the need for accountability and action. For Goodwin, this is not just a failure of leadership, but an act of deliberate deception, leaving the public to grapple with the consequences of policies that Starmer seems unwilling to defend or explain. The issue of grooming gangs further exemplifies Starmer's perceived ineptitude and moral weakness. Goodwin points out that despite widespread public concern and evidence of systemic failures in addressing these heinous crimes, Starmer has remained conspicuously silent or evasive. This refusal to engage directly with the issue signals either a lack of resolve or a fear of confronting uncomfortable political realities, both of which undermine his ability to lead effectively. For victims and their families, Starmer's inaction represents a betrayal, one that prioritizes avoiding controversy over delivering justice. In essence, Goodwin paints Keir Starmer as a leader more concerned with maintaining a polished image than with confronting the hard truths necessary to protect and serve the British people. His criticism exposes a leader who, in Goodwin's view, is willing to gaslight the public into complacency, avoiding accountability for his inconsistencies and failures. Starmer's inability, or unwillingness, to offer clarity and conviction on issues of such gravity reflects not just poor judgment but a fundamental disconnect from the values and concerns of the very people he aspires to lead. If leadership is defined by the courage to confront challenges head-on, Goodwin's analysis leaves little doubt that Starmer falls woefully short. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment below, and subscribe for more content. Join us on Telegram for updates and exclusive content.